Hey guys, today I want to get into Amazon Rank because I know a lot of you guys are kind of fixated on Rufus and AI, and while other people are still saying that, hey, nothing's changed, it's still A9, but I wanted to bring someone who is, he's kind of had like he's been in this space. He's one of the OGs. He's like one of the godfathers of, not only PPC, but also, going into organic rank. And he's going to show you exactly how Amazon rank is evolving throughout the years. And we're gonna, there's a new way of looking at Amazon rank. So I like to welcome Brian Johnson to the podcast. Welcome, Brian. How's it going?
Thanks, Gary. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think, rank is changing, right? So, today we're going to get into this, but why is this so important right now for Amazon sellers?
Well, the way I look at it is, there's usually a lot more chatter on social media about how things are changing when in fact they're usually not changing that much. There's new terminology and there's a lot of hype that comes out anytime something Amazon rolls something out. And I appreciate that, and it should be certainly paid attention to, and sometimes it's very impactful. I would say that from my perspective, it's not so much that the ranking itself has significantly changed that much. Yes, there's obviously a lot to talk about here, but it's more about we're getting better and better about how much data that we're looking at using newer technology in order to consume that data and be able to do things that we couldn't do previously. Things that is just not feasible for humans to process that much information. You've got to have machines and you've got to have smart machines, and that's it. We're kind of at a crossing point here in the last few years where the technology is significantly advancing and we can take advantage of that. So it's more about that brute force observation and analytics than it is about that they're actually changing the model. Um, it's
Definitely. Yeah.
it is kind of funny to see like how many people on a regular basis talk about it's like, yeah, the new A10 and all this kind of stuff. And you kind of laugh because sometimes it comes from credible sources and sometimes it's where somebody just used Chat GPT to create an article, and Chat GPT said like, oh, A10 is this real thing. It's not.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but it is
Yeah.
funny to see how people like
Uh,
they want it to be something new and something magical. And really it's no, here's a new way of looking at it.
right. Right. And, that's why I wanted to bring you on, Brian, because Brian has 18 years experience in e-commerce, 11 years in Amazon. And, when I first started learning to sell on Amazon FBA, like way back in like 2015, I was studying the content that Brian was putting out, with his, sponsored products academy. I remember there was like this PDF cheat sheet that was getting passed around, in some of the FBA groups, and it's just coming from Brian. Like this guy is like the source, right? And he's previously, he exited his three companies. Some of you guys know him from PPC Scope, Sponsored Product Academy, and also Canopy Management. But right now, he's pivoted like total like 100% pivot, focused entirely on organic search rank optimization on Amazon. And he's also built like a cool software that we're going to talk a little bit about at the end. And it uses big data to kind of reverse engineer how Amazon A9 algorithm, sorts products. So, he really, specializes in this. So, to kick things off, Brian, can you help us better understand? How does A9 behave? What does it look like, when it comes to like rank?
Yeah, I've got a couple of visuals that I can share as well, but just kind of from a top-down standpoint is um, when we went back and I always knew this if I had more data, if I had more information, if I could look at everything all at once, that I'd be able to recognize patterns. And this is something that my partner and I had started developing. Um, I don't know, probably, we started working together a little over 2 years ago. And he had been developing the deep learning models prior to that for another company in the Amazon space. And so the biggest piece on this was how do we collect as much as we can. And so we always knew that it's like there's got to be patterns that you can reverse engineer. A9 as an algorithm should not be so complex that we can't see the clues, that we can't see the patterns and be able to predict, okay, if I change A, I'll get result B. And as it turns out, we were able to do that. We were able to reverse most of how A9 works. There's always some nuances that you can't see. But in general, the way that we look at it is, for our users who are using the software, working with our team, we can help them know exactly why they rank or they don't rank for a search term, and then what to do about it, how to actually achieve that. The way that we get there is by understanding predominantly how A9 functions. What is important to A9? Because ultimately, we've got two jobs as sellers that we need to be able to do. One is we need to be compelling and convincing to the consumer that we want to buy our product, right? Emotive terminology and visuals that are appealing and are attractive, things that stand out and differentiate our product listing from others, so that the shopper looks at it and says, "Oh, cool, that's what I look. I'm interested in that, or that's what I want." But part of getting that visibility in the first place is, as you had mentioned before, like it used to be a game of like, how much PPC can I throw at this? How much ad spend is it going to take for me to get the visibility? And that is a model that is extremely profitable for Amazon, not so much for us as sellers. And so the second part of that is, how do you then appease, or how do you give what the A9 search algorithm wants on Amazon, so that it in turn comes back and says, well, you give me what I want, I'm going to give you what you want, which is higher organic search ranking.
Right. Right.
And so we can look at it. We've identified over just by looking, because we'll go as an example on this.
Hmm.
When we look at a specific product niche, we'll look at all the search terms, all the products that are sold on all those search terms. We'll take a look at all the product listings, what their offering is, how they are, rated, what kind of sales velocity they've got, whether or not
Yep.
they're running promotions. What is this word in position 3, or is it in position 9? Is it position 15? Whatever the case is. And so we identified probably over 100. Yeah, it's well over 100 what we call search rank factors. These are things that have weight, that have a measurable impact on A9. And so if we can
Hmm.
identify, okay, for a specific product niche, here are the top 10 or 12 most impactful things that you can optimize for,
Hmm.
and then you focus on optimizing those things, you're going to climb up the ranks as far as organic search goes. And so, in fact, let me share my screen.
Yeah, definitely. So if I understand correctly, Brian, it looks like A9, I mean, if you break it down roughly, there's over 100 factors that affect your search rank. And out of those, let's say there's 10 or 12 that are the most impactful. So these are the ones that sellers should focus on to get the maximum impact, right? It's almost like the 80-20 principle, but you're saying
Yeah,
like it's
definitely.
it's more like the 10% out of the 100, right?
Yeah.
That they should focus on.
Um, I'm a big proponent of focus, and certainly, Pareto.
Yeah.
Um, the and that definitely plays in here, because some of this is going to be familiar. It's like, oh, I already knew that. But what a lot of sellers don't realize is that the same rules that are commonly taught is like, here's how you increase conversion rate. Here's how you increase click-through rate. Here's how you increase rank. Here's how you get more visibility, more traffic.
Mhm.
They vary from product niche to product niche. That's one of the biggest things that we didn't even realize until we actually
Mm.
studied it in depth. To the point where we're collecting, you know, on a small niche, it might be 10 million data points. On a larger one, it might be 30, 40 million data points. And so we pull all that in, we run it through a deep learning model, and it goes through it and it looks at every single combination that it can put together and looks for patterns. And so that's
Mhm.
how we can recognize is that, and I'll show more of an example on this. There's certain types of search rank factors, ones that create, in this case here, imagine if you were going for, if you're one of these top 10 ASINs, and think of it from a standpoint of the more search rank factors that I can optimize the A9 wants for me. If I can give what A9 what it wants, the better I do a job of optimizing each one of those, the bigger my stack or my share of influence has on A9 compared to my competitors. And
Hmm.
so what this is an example of is there's going to be certain signals or search rank factors that some of these are going to be, and I'll skip over this pretty quickly here.
Hmm.
Stability, behavioral quality, momentum, engagement, relevance. Those don't make a whole lot of sense in this context. The point that I'm trying to drive here is you do have the ability to out-optimize your competitor
Hmm.
and unfairly game the system, if you will. Not
Hmm.
black hat, but
Hmm.
you simply are just doing a better job of focusing on the things that A9 wants from you in your particular product niche. And if you do that better than your competitors for each of the search terms you're trying to go after, you're going
Hmm.
to get a higher search rank. It's not that complicated, but
Yep.
how you get there is a little bit more complicated.
Hmm.
Some examples on this, and I won't go through this whole thing, just some quick examples on this.
Hmm.
Um, Search rank factors or those signals, those can be anything from like how often are you in stock, what is your price. Consider everything being relative to your competitors. This is not a pass fail as far as what Amazon wants. It's more of yes, um, you need to be retail ready in that you have, let's say, an FBA listing for, you have a product listing. Maybe you're shipping from FBA. You do have a price. You do have, conforming content. Your title is under 200 characters, that kind of stuff. That
Hmm.
applies to everybody. That is a pass fail. But when it comes to A9, it's more interested, I should say. I don't
Hmm.
want to personify that algorithm, but
Hmm.
A9 wants to know, are you outperforming each other?
Hmm.
Outperforming your competitors. And so if you put in effort in order to improve your conversion rate relative to your competition, that's one signal that you can now say like, oh, I beat them. Well,
Hmm.
what that also means is that I don't need to be at 100% optimized for something. All I need to do is be slightly more optimized than my best competitor, right? And the more of these that you can optimize for, the more, distance, the faster the runner you are in the marathon ahead of your competition.
Yep.
And so it comes down to, in fact, let me jump forward one more here. Here's an example. If I were to characterize this, or like, here's kind of the big set, right? The ones that come up most frequently. And
Hmm.
again, how much it impacts A9 does vary by the product niche, subcategory, browse node, however you want to call it. But it's basically the group of search terms that are used to find a product. A lot of times we get misled. A common mistake is a brand will use a typical keyword research tool. There's plenty of them out there.
Hmm.
Use a keyword research tool, and it'll come back and say, okay, we want to know who your top 5 to 10 closest competitors are. So you put those in there, and it comes back and says, here's all the search terms that seem like they come up, they're relevant. So now you
Hmm.
have this list of hundreds, if not thousands, sometimes tens of thousands search terms that are relevant to the products that you consider yourself competing against.
Hmm.
A9 doesn't care what your competitive set is, really. It compares because you're going to have products that show up that you don't directly compete with. It's a different product, but it still shows up in organic search for the same search term. And so you're not just competing against those that you added into the keyword research tool and it came back as, hey, here's the most popular ones by search
Hmm.
volume. That's a
Yep.
that's a very common mistake is they'll optimize according to like, well, if I just take all the search terms that have the top search volume and
Yes.
I stuff them into my title and my bullet points, my content and everything,
Yep.
then I'll just get, I'll be indexed and I'll rank better.
Yep.
Sometimes that
Hmm.
works. Usually
Hmm.
the stuff we see on social media success is like, hey, look, my rank improved.
Yeah.
It's not because they know why. They just simply just tried something that somebody told them to do from a keyword research tool and it happened to work.
Mm.
We went a step further and said, yeah, but we want to know why. We want to know specifically why. And in
Hmm.
what specific elements are we winning, are we failing compared to our competitors? Here's some of the top one. Here's kind of like the big 10 out of these 100 plus um, elements that influence.
Hmm.
Most of these shouldn't be any surprise, but it's interesting to see how often these come up in the top 10. Certainly, search term relevance when it comes to things like your title and your bullet points. Title by far always outpaces the other content fields. That's a common question we get is like, well, what's more important? Should I, focus on my A plus content and
Hmm.
or should I focus in on my title or my bullets? Title 9 times out of 10 wins. Not every
Mm.
time, but most of the time. So if you're just simply just playing the odds and you want a quick takeaway that is likely to work for you,
Yeah.
focus your product title onto the collection of search terms that you want to target. I've got a lot of rules when it comes to which ones that you actually choose, but
Yeah.
um my the other
Brian,
thing is
sorry to interrupt. So one key point that jumped out to me is that you have to consider your niche, right? Because each
yeah,
niche, as far as I understand, is different when it comes to the mix of the Big Ten and the other variables, right? So
yeah,
like, are there particular niches where, let's say, I mean, title would be not as important as bullets, or
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
So, an example on that. So, this is kind of where we see differences when it comes to like, well, price always matters. No, price does not actually.
Mm.
An example on something like price, and I'll get to title on this, but
Hmm.
um, there's how much influence does it have on A9 versus how much control do you have in order to differentiate yourself from your competitors? That's not a concept that most people are familiar with. They just say it's like, oh, well, we're going after the same search term. That's fine.
Hmm.
But how do you stand out? If you're in a product niche, electronics is usually pretty good about it. Let's say you sell a kitchen appliance and it has a brand name, it has a model number, and it has certain features that everybody shows in their title. Well, let's say that that brand name, that model number, that the wattage or the whatever the key metric is that you and all your competitors want to put in, that might take up 2/3 of your title. Now you only have a third of the title to work with in order to optimize to differentiate your product to A9 from your competitors. Very limited amount of space. So we do see in those cases where the title has a strong influence. Maybe it has a 10% impact on A9, but then maybe the features or the bullet points will
Hmm.
come back and maybe maybe they have a little bit less, maybe they have an 8% impact on A9,
Mm.
but you have a lot more flexibility to differentiate yourself and to stand out from your competition. In other words,
Yeah.
there's a lot more mistakes made among your competitors that you can then exploit
Yeah.
simply if you know where they're weak and where you're strong. That's
Yeah.
part of our system that we build is we see all of that. We see
Yeah.
in detail where are they
Yeah.
strong, where are they weak. It's not a guessing game.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
in some cases, there was one last month that we saw where features actually was higher as far as the weight on A9 than the title. That's pretty unusual to see that.
Yeah.
Usually
I've never
things
heard of that.
like
Yeah. But yeah, that is
the
very
bullet
unusual.
points,
Hmm.
the visible description, um, A plus, the
What niche was
specifications,
that
those will
in?
bounce around.
Can you tell us the niche where you had that aberration?
I'm trying to remember now which one it was, and I don't want to just make something up.
Oh, okay, okay,
Um,
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Okay.
I don't like doing that. I don't like just saying like, oh, it's a
Okay.
good story, so I'm gonna make something up. I don't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to do
Okay, okay,
that.
okay. Okay. All right,
The
let's keep going. But let's keep going.
Yeah, no,
Sorry
absolutely.
to sidetrack. Yeah. Hmm.
No, no, no. So,
Yeah.
so this is something where if that's all that you know, then the way that I would prioritize this is kind of where you and I were talking previously about we have this method called FIT or FIT.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a simple method that anybody can do. It doesn't require working with our company or our software. It's something that anybody can do. It's not 99% of sellers have already heard something similar to this. Use brand analytics in order to identify the search terms that are already outperforming your competition for your product. In other words, you're looking at things like what's the difference in my product's conversion rate on this search term compared to everybody else's, my essentially my competitive set. Usually competitive set is top 20, 30 products for the same search term. Am I doing better or worse from a conversion rate standpoint compared to most of my competitors? That's one filter. If you have a disadvantage or a significant disadvantage, let's say, for instance, your conversion rate is 3% below the average conversion, the average conversion rate that you see inside of search query performance, inside of brand analytics, then you're always going to be struggling for things like PPC ACoS is always going to be higher. You're not, even if you're in a high organic search rank, or if you do aggressive PPC or you do some kind of a promotion like a search find buy promotion, it still works fantastic as far as jumping up to page one. But it's not going to hold that, or it's going to constantly put resistance back on you if you don't have some kind of advantage. So this is part of taking the easier route, if you will, in
Mm-hmm.
that if you go in and use brand analytics, and I would look at the biggest amount of data you can. There's tools out there, there's Chrome extensions where you can collect data across multiple months and multiple quarters and look at it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
These are freely available.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably provide a link to one of those for the show
Show
afterwards.
notes. Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah, just to make it easier, because I mean, I my team loves it,
Mm-hmm.
but you go down and you figure it's like, okay, for if I'm in brand analytics, search query performance, let's say I look at Q1 2025
Mm-hmm.
for a specific ASIN, and I do this for every single ASIN that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows me here's all the search terms. Here's it shows all things like here's the search volume that this term has. But I can see, okay, which ones am I actually converting on? How about do I have at least one sale on one that I've sold at least one unit on in the last quarter? And I look at all those search terms. There's going to be search terms that the keyword research told me that's a very popular term. You should definitely go after that. And
Mm-hmm.
as it turns out, your product sucks at converting on that one search term.
Yeah.
And so then what's going to happen? If you try to force your product through PPC, through internal or external promotion, through hyper optimizing, your title and your content on that one search term, and you've got no business being ranked for that search term, A9 will push back and say, look, your conversion rate sucks compared to, I'm going to show these other ones that have a higher chance of converting. I'm going to show them above you, regardless
Mm-hmm.
of how much money you put into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so lean into the search terms that have a balance, my second and third point here, where your relative conversion rate first, your
Mm-hmm.
relative click-through rate second, and then ideally you're roughly competitive, and that's a very kind of a vague statement, in your
Mm-hmm.
price point compared
Mm-hmm.
to your average competitor.
Mm-hmm.
That's important also because you could have a lot of times your conversion rate is reflected on how badly you're out of alignment as far as your price point on that search term. It doesn't mean that your product doesn't deserve to have a higher price point compared to your competitive set, compared to your competitors' products.
Mm-hmm.
It means that on that particular search term, Amazon is showing to consumers who are showing more intent to purchase a much cheaper product, let's say. We
Yeah.
see ones where here's a search term and I've converted on it, but I've got a $160 price point, and this particular search term has an average $35 price point. You're not even remotely. You're going to catch some people. It's like, oh, well, that's a luxury good or something, right?
Hmm.
But ultimately, uh, if you're in a product niche where price matters, an example on that would be a commodity. If you sell toilet paper, for instance, price is absolutely going to matter. It's a race to the bottom, right?
Yes. Yep.
Um, that's not quite how I wanted that to come out, but that actually is kind of funny. If you're selling
Yeah.
toilet paper, it's a race to the
Yeah.
bottom.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll have to use that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But if you sell luxury watches, for instance,
Hmm.
price is rarely a consideration. So you could be abnormal as far as your competitive set, as far as price, but then what you're going to find is that in your particular product niche, other things are going to be a lot more important. For toilet paper, people aren't looking at reviews. I had a clean wipe. Who cares, right? They're looking at
Yeah.
price, they're looking at commodity, they have the
Yeah.
general familiarity with it.
Right.
A luxury watch, they're less sensitive to price when it comes to conversion rate, but they will spend more time going through the reviews. And so if
Hmm.
your review rating and your review count is poor relative to your competition, again, you're going to fail on that one.
Yeah.
And so part of this is studying each of those search terms in the brand analytics in search query performance and saying, for each of my products, where am I currently excelling? Doesn't mean that's your end game. It means you got to have a starting point. Most of us as brands have a whole catalog, a whole section of our catalog that underperforms. And so we tend to lean into the hero products, and we have anxiety, and we spend more money, and we spend all of our time on these hero products, and they've already kind of maxed out their market share. That's
Hmm.
part of something else that search query performance will also show is what's the potential market share for that search term and how much of it do you have?
Hmm.
If you are at we had we had a client, a user that we recently took in period probably about 2 months. They went from a 1% market share to a 6% market share. Now that doesn't sound like a big jump, 1% to 6%. That's a 500 fold, that's a 500% jump,
Yeah.
in market share, which is significant. But we do see where um, there tends to be some resistance when you start getting up around 20-25% market share. There's market dynamics that go into that. That's a whole different scientific discussion there.
Hmm.
Um, but generally, what I'm looking for is what are the search terms for each of my ASINs? What are the search terms where I'm selling? There is plenty more room for me to grow and to expand, where I could probably grow 10 times and not I could have 10 times as much sales and still not hit the 20-25% of market share cap.
Hmm.
But I've got my relative conversion rate is better than 0%. And second is my relative click-through rate is ideally better than 0%. It's slightly better,
Hmm.
in line or
Hmm.
slightly better, just not massively negative.
Yeah.
And on each search term, the price point is relatively close. You can still be
Hmm.
10, $20 off, on a $50 product. Just don't be like that example that I had where it's like, oh, you're selling a $160 product in this search term, really
Yeah.
wants to show to consumers that want a $35 product.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you avoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the ones, those search terms that you narrow down. And that list of search terms will get really small real fast.
Hmm.
But those are the ones you lean into. Those are the ones you put into your title. Those are the ones you go aggressive on your PPC, especially if you have an advantage on the conversion rate, because you're much more likely to maintain cost efficiency in your advertising when you go after search terms that have where you got a conversion rate advantage. But lean into what's already working, reap the rewards of that, and then go back and work on more difficult or harder targets.
Yeah. That's huge. I mean, that's like making sense of like which search terms you should go after because most people they're just like blindly going after any search term that they're not ranking well for and they're just overlooking these factors, right? Like your relative conversion rate against competition, your relative click-through rate, and also like the market share. And I think the fact that there's, once you hit that 20-25% market share, like A9, as far as I understand, doesn't want you to, it's like an uphill battle, right? But if you only have like 5% or 10%, there's still plenty of room to expand. So that's kind of
It's
like,
actually,
yeah.
yeah, it's actually more about the consumer than it is A9. A9
Mm,
will continue to push you up. And
uh,
in some cases it does.
yeah.
Certainly anybody who's got a branded term who has 80% of the market share, they're like, why don't I have 90% market share of my own
Yeah.
brand, branded term, right?
Yeah.
But generally what happens is that shoppers, that's shopper dynamics.
Yeah.
They don't all gravitate to the one. They look to see, there's other factors that's like, well, you know what, I really like the model that's in this secondary image in this particular product listing. It just resonates with me.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
no idea why. I like the
Yeah.
fact this is a darker color of blue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why you don't gain 100% market share unless
Right.
it's only your brand name. Then
Right.
maybe.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Right. This is super fascinating stuff. I wish we had more time. But we need to, maybe we can bring you back in the future for a part two, but we got to wrap up in another, let's say 5 minutes. So, what else should we
Absolutely.
cover? Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else here that I wanted to touch on here. This was just kind of like the way that for everything that we do with Deep M is that this is an example where we look at a specific product niche and we see like in this particular niche, and I don't remember which one this one is title optimization had a 28% impact on A9. Well, that tells me most of my time should be spent on split testing my title and crafting my
Hmm.
title and making sure that my title contains the words and phrases where my brand analytics tells me I'm a success at already. Let me lean into that even further and gain the organic rank on that. Second would be things like bullet points in this case. There's a number of other things that go in there that require a lot more explanation as far as short-term versus long-term promotion, whether or not how things affect by stock out. Um, Let me stop sharing because I know that you wanted to also touch base on things like Rufus and Cosmo. And how does that
Yes.
inject into this conversation?
Yes. Yeah. So that's the hot topic at the moment. Everyone's
Yeah.
worried, like keywords are dead, and we're all moving towards like, AI search, like Rufus and
Yeah.
Cosmo algorithm. So what are you seeing, Brian?
So we're certainly seeing a growing volume of, it's gradual, but a growing volume of consumer use of Rufus as they become more familiar with things like language models and Rufus in order to do searches, AI-driven searches. Those results are going to bring back additional results. That doesn't change how A9 ranks the products. What that does is it provides kind of a secondary view. It doesn't replace the organic search results. What it does is simply just adds in an additional um, conversation that can bring up varying results. And certainly there is a lot of, we get heavy into things as far as data science, as far as, intent driven words, semantic equivalence,
Mm,
semantic exchange, some of these kind of things that where you can influence any of the algorithms, whether it's Rufus or it's A9, where you can influence how well you come up in search. Rufus is additive. It's not replacing anything. It's simply just additive to the shopping experience. It
hmm
doesn't mean that anything else is obsolete. It's simply just a as if Amazon were to roll out a new set of ads. Amazon changes things over time. As
hmm
if they roll out a new set of ads, those new ad placements. Remember back in the day when you used to have a vertical ad on the right-hand side of the search results.
mm.
That's you got to go way back for
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
removed that, right? But
Mm,
back in the day, that was something that was took up real estate on certainly on a laptop, for instance.
hmm
Um, but that would just became an additional view. Rufus is that additional view.
Mm,
Yes, it's popular. Yes, it's like oh, the world is crumbling, and
hmm.
you're gonna die if you don't you're gonna be out of business if you don't learn Rufus.
Yeah.
Hype. It's
Mm.
bullshit. It
Yeah.
is way overstated as far as the impact.
Hmm.
Should you learn and pay attention? Yes. Is it replacing everything you're doing now? Definitely not.
Mm.
The nice thing about collecting so much data as we do is we get to see how much does it actually influence rank results and where products show up in search results. And I would say that actually Cosmo probably actually has a bigger impact on this because Cosmo is introducing things like image to text translation by the AI.
Mm.
This is something that I think that certainly the listeners definitely should be taking a closer look at is there are various tools out there, whether it is an example, the first one that comes to mind, I think, is like Product Pinion, which is typically used for split testing
Yes.
images and content and that kind of stuff. But they also have a free tool that you can go and use, and I can get you the link on that one
Hmm.
that checks. It's like Image Checker or Image Check, um, and that allows you to upload the images from your product listing, and it'll come back and say, how does one technology within Amazon's AI collection of technology, how does it interpret that image? And a lot of times there are images, especially um, like the secondary images, where it'll come back and it'll misinterpret that. It'll
Mm.
it'll say like, oh, well, this particular kitchen tool is actually um, it's used for kneading bread, and it's a weapon,
Yeah.
and it you know it's like
Yeah.
like no, it's not a weapon. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? But
Yeah.
that's how the AI. That's an example where, as a seller, we need to start looking more at our visual content, like our images and our videos, and saying, how is the AI interpreting this? Because if it gets it wrong, it's going to do things like flag your listing as an adult product because it
Yes.
mentions a weapon, because you're promoting alcohol consumption. Who knows, right? You need to go in and really start scrutinizing your images. And anytime you do any kind of a listing refresh and create new images, make sure that you're checking some kind of tools. Even if you throw it into something like a chat GPT and just say, like, what is this image about? Make sure that it's telling you the right story that's relevant to that product. Because if
Mhm.
Amazon misinterprets that new image
Yeah.
as something negative, it may
Yeah.
pull you away from your target audience at a
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge point. I love that quick hack. I mean, throw that image into ChatGPT. What is this image about? Just to find out what like another AI would
Yeah.
interpret it to avoid
You
any
should have
traditional
a VA
flags.
doing that for all of your images.
Yeah.
Just
Great,
throw it
great
into
tip.
ChatGPT or whatever your favorite language model is that can
Yeah.
do the image to text translation.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
It's a
All
true
right,
story.
Brian. Yeah, that's huge. We're just about out of time. I want to make sure that our listeners are able to connect with you if they want to learn more. So what's the best way to connect, Brian?
I live most of the time on LinkedIn and WhatsApp, so I can certainly be found out there, Brian R. Johnson. Our
Uh-huh.
site, just for Deep M, obviously we got a big technology, company behind us here,
Yeah,
is just Deep M, as in Deep Marketplace,
yeah.
deepm.ai.
Deepm.ai. Okay, we'll link that up below in the show notes. And I mean, how does that help sellers?
So that's a very advanced system in that we take all the data that we collect. We have the ability, as far as I know, we're the only one, but I don't want to be so presumptuous, but that has reverse engineered A9 and can tell them how much does your title weigh on A9, and therefore how much importance does the title have? How much does the price have, the bullet points, whatever the combination is, so that you know where to focus your attention. But something I didn't even bring up is businesses of your products against your competitors, so that from a week to week standpoint, you know exactly where you're beating them or you're losing to your competitors, and specifically what you need to modify in order to beat them from a search rank standpoint.
That's huge. All right.
It's massive. Yeah, it's I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I
All
get
right.
giddy talking about it, but yeah,
Yeah, I
it
can
is very
tell. Yeah.
cool tech.
So Brian, obviously, I mean, he's been living, breathing, he's been doing this for decades. So highly recommend you guys check out dpm.ai if you want to learn more about like, the exact like pinpoints, how you're winning and losing against your competitors on each search term. Also connect with Brian over LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been super valuable breakdown of, A9 and, what stars to be looking at and kind of like debunking some of the hype going on as well. I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did too. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you at the next session. Bye, everybody.